Hey, it's Garage Quest, and today we're talking about role playing.
And to
Hey, and welcome to Garage Quest, the show that takes place in a garage and where we talk about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm your host, May McDonough. With me, as always, is my co-host Rusty, and my adventuring group is back. So I have my brother Ryan. I almost forgot your name, brother Ryan.
You were going to say Brian, weren't you?
I might. Yeah. And then this is Brian right here.
Sorry.
Master of puns.
Playing the role of Brian today will be Brian.
Yeah. So
Wait, I thought I was Brian.
Today we are all here together because today we're talking about role playing. I wanted to bring in the group I play with every week because I think it's a really great role playing group. So let me just throw it out. What is role playing, first of all? Someone want to?
Yeah, it's when you play a role. Very literally.
That's
No,
true.
but I mean simply, it's just if you put yourself in somebody else's shoes and you act as if it's acting at its core.
And I actually think role playing is highly underrepresented in the role playing game community.
Yeah.
Like most of the media that you see online is about optimization and power gaming.
Yeah.
And lore.
Yeah.
It's not about the most important side of RPGs, which two of the three words in that acronym are role playing.
Yeah.
All right? We all used to do this when we were kids.
Yeah.
We'd play the role of somebody we imagined. We'd play house, we'd play doctor,
Yeah.
we'd play firefighter or whatever. You know?
Cowboys and engines.
So in a way, RPGs are like an adult way of like reverting to that like very simple state of bliss.
Yeah. I mean, I still, when I'm alone, pretend a little bit. I don't normally admit that, but I like imagining that I'm, better or more interesting than I am.
I like imagining that too.
Yeah. Sure you do.
People do it all the time in video games, and it's not considered weird. It's a little more challenging when, when that you really have to come up with the dialogue and stuff on your own instead of selecting from a list or something. But that also kind of gives you the freedom to have something unexpected happen, which is what I think everyone's after in their entertainment, and it's increasingly difficult to find.
Yeah. And I want to put out there that this can be an intimidating part of the game, I think,
If you're not used to it.
Yeah, to people who haven't played. Actually, there's a lot of elements of D&D that sound intimidating to someone who hasn't played before. There's paperwork, there's all this stuff, but I honestly think it's the role-playing aspect that might be the most intimidating to some people because it's kind of like performing, and that is puts people on the spot.
It's the only thing that's subjected to stage fright, which most humans actually have,
But we are with friends. That's okay. I forgive you. You are with your friends, hopefully, or you're making friends. And honestly, if the role play isn't going somewhere, you don't have anything to say. You just don't say anything. So there's not.
It's low stakes.
Yeah, low stakes,
Yeah.
no pressure.
Yeah.
So what makes a good role player?
I wonder this all the time. I know one thing I wonder whenever I like kind of go out on a limb and start role playing a lot. I sometimes in my head I'll be like, am I annoying everybody? Like to what degree is everyone else like, let's move on and like get to the fighting or whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess you just have to read the room in that regard. But I guess you can always go back to the acting and improv basics of of listening and yes and all that stuff, where it's like a good role player commits to what their character is thinking while accepting that other people's characters are in their control, and then just reacting to that the way their character would.
Yeah, I think also it's important to know that the yes and concept, which is an improv concept, but the yes and concept definitely does work, but it doesn't have to mean that you actually agree to everything someone else is saying. It just means take what they're saying and build upon it. Yeah. If, Rusty's character proposes something, instead of just saying, no, I don't want to, which, maybe once in a while used sparsely can still be cool for your character. But in general, say, what about this? Because I'm not sure what you're proposing is going to function, because what about this and that and this and the other thing? It's just, it's participating in the world of pretend that everyone is kind of creating.
For sure. I think that's a really good point, because participation is like the main thing, because like if you're in character or whatever, like being actively involved with what's going on within the group and within the plot of the thing, being engaged and just being involved with the story. Just put your 2 cents in, but not you as a player, you as a character, So again, putting yourself into the person that you're portraying shoes and being like, well, what would they think about this? And then adding into the story with that little bit.
Wondering what your character would do is integral, because you have this cast of characters, and they're going to slowly learn which characters they interact best with. And that's how you get really good role-playing happening. If your character is, for instance, my character is a really selfish character and kind of not thinking about how their actions are affecting anyone.
Your character is a selfish character?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there is, for instance, one of your characters, Shump, was such a lovable guy, and you were dumb enough, not correct, right? He's supposed to be dumb, not to notice when I was shrugging you off, and it slowly kind of broke down my character's layers, and we became friends, ultimately realizing we were brother and sister, but that's another story.
Oh, yeah.
In real life, too.
Yeah. Oh, the lore goes deep.
Yeah.
So deep. But, and there have been moments throughout our campaign where I feel like my character's been close with each of you for a period of time, because of choices everyone made while they were role-playing, and so I think commitment to character is really...
I think you actually just stumbled upon one of the most important elements of role-playing in the gaming experience, and that is, because of choices you made, my character was more involved with your character. And that's it. Just like in reality, like the role-playing game experience is heightened. It's more realistic, more engaging when what unfolds is actually a reflection of the player character's choices.
Yeah.
And I think that's something important that not only player characters need to realize, but DMs really need to internalize.
Well, I was going to say, kind of like playing on how we were talking about, it's maybe an underrepresented portion of the D&D experience is role-playing, especially from a new person's perspective. Like, you come in and you got to, like, look at all these stats and, like, build your character. And character building for a new person is, I mean, let's face it, it's very overwhelming, and I'm sure scares a lot of people away from the get.
There's like algebra and
yes. And well,
like,
you have to
much.
go back, and assuming you have a book, you have to go back and then forth. So what I'm saying is that for how unapproachable the whole character building process is, I think it's easy to overlook character development. And there's a lot of things in the book that can help you with character development, as far as like... I mean, it's basically generalities, like you have elves that are supposed to be old and wise, but at the same time youthful, and you can get a lot of character traits from your class, from your race, from your background, and all these kinds of things. But picking those things, knowing that you're going to be involved in role play to actually be that person, I think that's where a lot of the magic can happen. That's easy to miss when you're building your character.
Yeah, I think that's true. So, do you guys think there's such a thing as overcommitment to your character in roleplay?
I think like something that probably a lot of people run into is the situation where a character the character wouldn't want to go on the adventure that everyone's going on. And if you just totally literally commit to your first conception of the character, you can like kill the fun for everybody.
Yeah.
But one thing I've found when I've run in that situation is to like this, I guess this gets back to the yes and kind of principle, which is it can actually be kind of interesting then if you think, well, what would make my character want to do this? What's true to my character? Yeah, so sometimes it's like my character's totally selfish and we're just going to rescue somebody. You could just be like, I'm not interested, I'm not going to do it. Or you could be like, how can I make some money off of this situation?
Like imposing your will as a character into the storyline. Yeah. You know, I've used the analogy before that like role playing is like jazz.
Jazz.
Role playing is like jazz without that little click on the table. Sorry, guys.
But now can you do it without explaining the little click?
And without her laughing at you explaining it.
Can you do it without being pretentious?
Cool. So I've said this a couple times before. But role-playing is like jazz, right? So everybody in the ensemble is familiar with the chord progression, but they're each trying to like maximize their own impact in the composition, right?
I don't know why I picked the clarinet, but
it's the dice.
I like that was your go-to. Yeah, it could have been anything, but in your mind it was a clarinet.
It's the dice you don't roll.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I mentioned metagaming earlier. Can we talk about what that is?
Yeah, metagaming coming from the, I think, metaphysical philosophy.
It's Greek.
Yeah.
Meta's Greek, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I've been pretending to know this whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like where your consciousness as the controller of your player character infuses itself into the character itself.
So it can be as simple as having too much conversation about what's going on as your actual reality self.
True.
But it can also be making decisions for your character based on things your character wouldn't know.
Especially if it goes against your characterization, your character's...
Which, in my opinion, is the only time metagaming is detrimental to the game. Is like when it breaks the suspension of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's... I agree with that. Except I do think there's an exception. I think that too much time talking about the game can be detriment to me.
It can also kind of lead to cheating. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
What does it mean to cheat at D&D?
Well, right. And that's the thing, because you're only cheating yourself.
True.
As is true in school.
And in life. Yeah.
There'll be times where it's like, your character is in a different room, and my character is across the map, from yours, and you're in trouble. Your character's in trouble. My character wouldn't know that, and sometimes it'll be like, "Oh, I decided to go check on Brian's character."
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes that could be fine. It's like up to you as a group. But then I would also say that's one of those situations where there could be something more interesting that happens if you go.
That
keep
has
going
happened
with
recently.
Yeah.
Drew, your character, was dying.
Yeah.
But you had ran out before all of us, and you were hidden behind a large tower, a siege tower.
Yep. You had no line
and
of sight.
I knew, as myself, May, that what was happening. I knew he had hit 0 hit points.
Because we're literally sitting right next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as Elementos, I was very far away and there was an obstruction. I couldn't see you. And that proposed a challenge. How do I, as Elemenos, create a scenario where I'm not cheating, but I also maybe find a way to get into sight for him so that it
Exactly.
propels the story
Exactly,
forward
because
so
you
I can heal
figured
him.
out how to use the Flumpaphone to check in on the status of
Like,
Drew.
yeah, we have this made up
Yeah.
magical item, the Flumpaphone. Mine's a tattoo, by the way. We
Oh.
all have different shapes and
Aspects of it,
sizes,
yeah.
But yeah, when it dawned on me I had that, I was like, hey, how you doing, buddy? You know?
Like, oh,
I'm
just, dying a bunch
Okay,
over
move
here.
5 feet to your left, and
Yeah.
now I can help you. But if I had just said, hey, Brian, if you move out from behind that obstruction, I'll be able to see you and then help you. It just dampens the power of the game,
But
and like you
also-
said, cuts off other strange options.
But knowing where that line is helped guide your role playing to
Yeah.
make the story really good.
yeah, because ultimately I did metagame a little.
Because in every work of fiction, there's always that little coincidence, you know, that happens that like perfectly aligns, and
Well,
that
even
saves
in-
the day.
Even
you
in
know?
real life, though, you know, like, you know, I'm a only child of a single mother, so like, if I'm fucking up, somehow my mom just knows, and that's like a real thing in life, you know. And there's
Yeah.
not a way to account
Yeah.
for that with dice.
I think it's important to note the difference between metagaming and inactive role playing, because the book, the DMG separates active role playing and inactive role playing. Active role playing, speaking as your character.
Yep.
Inactive role playing, describing your character or what your character's doing. So if the DM says, you receive a note and you open it up and only you can read it because it's in Elvish and you're the only one who speaks Elvish. That's not true. Everyone speaks Elvish. So let's say it's in Primordial or something.
Yeah.
And then you can either choose to do active role play, which is, let's say, if you want to share this information with your players, you can say, hey guys, I just got this note and it says this. Or you can do something called inactive role playing, which is to say, okay, I tell everybody what it says. And for me personally, I think there's really important that you have both in the game. But I think there are groups that just, you know, are more about inactive role playing. They just describe, they're narrators.
And
to
on the
their game
contrary, I think that there are groups
that commit.
that are like totally committed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, like there was this vampire RPG back when I was in high school. I actually forget the name of it at the top of my head, but that was entirely like I am personifying my character, and everything that we do when we play a game, we're literally reenacting. Like down to like we're not playing at a tabletop, but like we're playing in the room where our characters are playing because we're actually our characters.
I think there were some kids at my high school that were probably playing that game 24/7.
Yeah.
It's something I'd want to bring up, because that's definitely the kind of thing that I do think comes down to player preference and also player ability, because some people can improvise more easily than others. And, you know, like, one thing I don't think we've touched on is the question of voices and accents and stuff. Because,
Yep.
you know, Brian can do voices consistently. I can't keep the same voice going, you know, for a long period
And
of
I
time.
can't even start a voice.
So it's like I have to just say most things the way I would say it, but then I'll like try to say it the way my character would, but it's still in my voice. I can't just lower my voice consistently or like do an accent. But then sometimes I'll find myself in a situation where, you know, I'll be playing a character that's kind of dumb, and I'll be trying to say something, and I can't think of the dumb way to say it.
So I think that's a good point here to make, which is when you're choosing for your character attributes that don't align to your actual self in a severe way, like an extremely different level of intelligence, or if you're not someone who feels really strong with accents, either be prepared not to do very well
Yeah.
and come in and out and do the slap of the bass thing.
I can't do accents at all, which is ironic because I studied linguistics in college. Like, that's what my degree is in.
Yeah.
And I can't do it for the life of me. You know?
I'm pretty good at accents if I prep and, and put myself in that I'm committed place. A lot of things like accents are just about like, just no holds barred.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Well, I think
The minute you start to hesitate or doubt yourself, you falter.
I think there's 2 points to be made about that, which is one, for me, like as far as like picking a voice or a vernacular or accent or whatever, I always like to find like a key thing. Like this one guy, I'm like, okay, it's basically Liam Neeson, but if he was, whatever, just find like some kind of rock of something that you can stick to and go back to. But the other point is that sometimes no accent or like a weird accent, it's okay. It's Faerun. Like maybe that's a real thing here.
Yeah. And it's not a real place. We don't know what they sound like to begin with.
Yeah.
I think it's an inclination for a lot of people to either go commoners sound British,
Sure.
and and then we go maybe to the island, the outer isles like Scotland and Ireland for poorer or more pirate like characters.
old-timey.
But I think that's just because the community and the lore of D&D is so based in either British lore or inspired by things like Lord of the Rings
Tolkien,
and that.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's a mindset that we just do as people, but that's not true of this world. It's another world. It's not even our planet.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're free to do what you want. Just know that when you make those choices, you need to decide for yourself. If you make a choice for an accent or an intelligence difference, choose ahead of time, how committed to this am I going to be? How much do I want to prep for this? And that can really save you some difficulty
Yeah.
in the long run. Does anyone have any other tips for role playing?
I think something that it's similar to what just came up, but I think it can be applied more broadly than accents is like, I think someone mentioned kind of having go-to ideas, having kind of something you can, a bag of tricks you can keep pulling from. I found that like one of the things that makes a character hard to role play is if they're too complicated. And that can be really it's hard to nail, but basically the more simple your character can be complex, but if you have a few simplified ideas of how they behave, that can help you know how they interact with people. So like, you might have a character. I have a character we've mentioned that's kind of dumb, and he's got like a whole backstory and a bunch of different things he wants. But a lot of times I'm thinking, I might be thinking, okay, he's dumb. So what would a dumb person say in the situation? Instead of thinking, what would someone who's got father issues and like all this complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And you can have, and it doesn't have to just be a one-trick pony, but sometimes if it's like a few tricks where it's like, okay, they're dumb, but they want to be perceived as smart or something like that. Because I think when I've had trouble making a character like actually come out to the group, it's usually because it was too complicated what I was trying to convey. I think my character who was one of the merry men basically, and is an anarchist
Scout.
With him for a long time I felt like he didn't have much of a personality, and then eventually I started to focus on the anarchist kind of thing and think like, it just ended up being making jokes about the the 99%.
Established.
Well,
like
yeah, and
Yeah.
he
the
just
great
does everything.
the great success about what you did with Scout, especially in the past couple of levels, is that you really did like only focus on these 2 or 3 elements of Scout's personality. So every time the scenario presented itself, Scout reacted in one of these ways. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, well, how does this situation reflect on the common folk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does this situation reflect on the distribution of wealth?
Yeah.
How does this situation reflect on the power of the establishment authority? You know, and you really kept your reaction as a character to the scenario within those 2 or 3 motifs.
I would like to break in here and say that on most character sheets, there's a section for ideals. There's
Flaws
a
and
section.
bonds.
Yes. So the way in my mind, those are there for a reason. If you can really narrow down a simple sentence into those boxes, I like to add backstory and motivation because your backstory, your ideals, your bonds, your motivation, they can all be clashing and different. But if you have those boxes to refer to, then when you're given an opportunity or a circumstance arises in which you need to make a choice as a character, you can ask yourself, well, here's my motivation, here's my ideals. What does this cater to? Does this cater to my motivations? Okay, then that helps me make my choice. Does this cater to my ideals? Okay, that helps me make this choice.
Does this fall into my flaws?
Sure.
Okay, then this
Yeah.
helps me not succeed.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is my temptation.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. I'm probably guilty of not utilizing those boxes in a way as well as I could, but
No, but that is really
what they're
one of the
for.
cool things about 5th edition D&D is the way that they've got the character backgrounds. Like you don't have to roll for all of those. You can pick them or invent your own.
Sure.
yeah.
You know, but you're absolutely right. As long as you keep those boxes in mind, which aspect of my player character does this scenario most appeal to?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to follow that path in my
Yeah.
role playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing, like if the on the topic of, I kind of feel like, what if you don't know how to roleplay? Like, how do you figure out what your character would say? Like all of these things, and then I'll tack onto that alignment is something that I think, from what I hear, like I'm relatively new in this whole thing, but it used to play a lot bigger role in the game, and in 5th edition, which is what we play, not so much. Not
Yeah.
so much, really. There's
Yeah.
a very few things where alignment comes into play, but I feel like there's so much character things that can come from just that spectrum of good to evil, and then chaotic to lawful.
Has anyone in our group been anything but chaotic good?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Drew as a druid, in my mind, I play him as inherently neutral because on the one hand, he's a good person, but he also respects the fact that there's a balance in nature.
So
you know?
neutral, true
Yeah,
neutral.
true neutral.
Yeah.
Because really, if there's somebody who's doing too much good, that could be as much of a problem in upsetting the balance as
Exactly.
somebody doing too much bad.
Because if no rabbits died, there would be no grass to support the whole ecosystem.
But that weirdly to
you know?
me is what I consider chaotic good, because I consider good like your nature, your intentions, and the chaotic, lawful, neutral, etc. more of a reflection of like your behavior.
Well, it's the means.
So it's interesting
How
that
do
you
do
interpret
good?
it differently.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that this touches upon like a larger DM topic, which may be like just total tangential, but the notion of morality versus ethical centered storylines is like the morality based stories are a little bit flat. You know, good versus evil. Like, of course, everybody wants to be the good guy.
Sure.
History is rife with bad guys that think they're good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and good guys that don't realize that they're bad guys.
Yes.
You know,
Oof.
really,
And sometimes history determines who's the good guy.
Oh yeah.
the good story comes from the ethics behind it. It's about like not whether things are objectively good or bad, but what is more important in each individual decision.
Yeah.
You know, that shapes the history or the storyline.
So last question, and I'm truly curious, do you have to enjoy role-playing to enjoy D&D?
You don't have
That's a good question.
I don't think you have to do any. I mean, yeah, you could definitely quietly, just like, if you, especially if you work that into your character, you're like, he's mute and he's mute and straightforward, and so wake me up when the fight happens, or you can still like
True.
explore the map and stuff. Like, I don't see any reason why you'd have to enjoy that. Yeah, it's just. I think you should just know what you want.
You absolutely do not have to enjoy role playing, but you have to give it a go.
So since we've had two to that direction, I'm gonna have to take the counterpoint and be like, to me, asking, do you have to enjoy role playing to enjoy D&D is like saying, do you have to enjoy the taste of beer to get drunk? And it's like, well, not really, not really.
But it sure as fuck
It sure
helps.
helps. It sure helps.
There are choices and interactions you have to make in free time that kind of rely on role playing. Mm-hmm. But again, you can just describe it. But I do think that there's character commitment to come back to some keywords for this episode.
At the very least, you've got to put your own consciousness inside of those constraints of the game.
Yeah.
So even at the most foundational level, there is a certain abstraction to your consciousness that is, in essence, role-playing.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have that Pete Holmes sketch where he says he wants to just lay back and take it all in,
Link in description or no?
Oh, sure. I can do that. I love Pete. All right. Any final words from everybody? I feel like
I have one. Just because...
That's two.
I don't know. I guess just because... people who are really great at role-playing, and you already are well-versed in that, I think you're going to love D&D if you don't already play it. If you do play it, I'm willing to bet that it's one of the things that you have the most fun with, like we do. But if you're just coming into it and you're unsure, those are the people that I would want to talk to because, I think that you can have fun, and I believe that it is a form of therapy, like with your friends, and it's super fun, and it's like tabletop, and there's so much to be gained from it. So if you're nervous about that, keep in mind that you are playing with your friends, so it's just like, like when you go to the movies or whatever, and you like do movie quotes, or like whatever you do with your friends to like have fun, it's like that. It's not necessarily, you don't have to perform, it's not for an audience, it's not going down in the history books. It's just a thing that you do. It's like banter with your friends, but in the context of the book. So try it out. It's fun.
All right. Well, I think we've nailed role-playing. If you have any tips for role-playing, feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear them. And, please subscribe. This is Garage Quest, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.
Goodbye.